What's happening, fellow film buffs? It's Straight Shooter again, and welcome to episode 9. It's time for How I See It. So today, again, I'm at Team Sound Studios, even though it looks a little bit different. So today, I'm here, as you can tell by the title, to review Ralph Breaks the Internet, which is also known as Wreck-It Ralph 2. As always, my reviews are not spoiler-free, so just so that you're forewarned. It's been a while since this movie came out, I know. It was a movie that I saw the first one. I don't own it. I thought it was an okay movie, but I thought it was entertaining enough to check out the second one. I saw it in a second-run theater. It follows the story again of Wreck-It Ralph, voiced by John C. Reilly, and his best friend Vanellope, voiced by Sarah Silverman. And one thing I have to say about the first Wreck-It Ralph and the second Wreck-It Ralph that I like a lot is how Sarah Silverman sounds very convincing as a little girl. And you wouldn't look at the character and hear it on screen and think, yeah, that's Sarah Silverman, unless you knew it was Sarah Silverman, which I kind of dug because she's a pretty funny comedian and she's also a talented voice actress. If you saw the first Wreck-It Ralph, you know the story. He was a video game villain, and a lot of the characters return from his Fix-It Felix is there, the woman that he fell in love with from the other game, Hero's Duty, played by Jane Lynch, who is always funny. She's a little bit underused in this movie, but mostly because the movie doesn't really focus on Fix-It Felix. But there is a kind of a really funny little side story about them, how they adopt all the kids, all the racers from Sugar Rush because the game gets unplugged. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. The characters from Sugar Rush come back. The premise of the movie is basically Ralph tries to help Vanellope in the game because she's complaining about how the game is boring, it's predictable, it's the same tracks, there's no excitement. So he builds a track off another track for her. And she goes off on the track and she's like, wow, this is fun. But the player in the real world is trying to control the car and it's not working. So she tries to steer really hard and it breaks the steering wheel. And they have to unplug the game because they don't make that part anymore. The manufacturer went out of business. They have to buy the part on eBay, but it costs too much money. So he unplugs the game. And everyone in Sugar Rush leaves the game so that they don't get deleted or whatever. And then everyone's scrambling around trying to find room in their houses for them temporarily. And that's how Fix-It Felix and his wife adopt all the racer kids from Sugar Rush, which was pretty funny. And there are more video game cameos, but not as heavily as the first Wreck-It Ralph because a lot of them you already see. So the first act of the movie is fairly entertaining. It starts on the premise where they have to go into the internet, try to buy the steering wheel for Vanellope's game. When they go into the internet, it's a bigger world, it's more involved. Vanellope discovers this other racing game, which is a lot more hardcore, a lot more dangerous than Sugar Rush was. Ralph was like, no, that's too dangerous and whatever. But she finds that's her dream, was that to be in a more exciting race. And they also meet up with characters in that game. And one of them is played by Gal Gadot. And she looks like Gal Gadot, sounds like Gal Gadot, but come on, Gal Gadot's awesome. And she ended up being a really cool character in the movie as well as in the game. And then you have Wreck-It Ralph, who... This is the one problem that I have with the movie. They were concentrating too much on how to bring them back together because he was always screwing everything up. That's what he does. He wrecks things. So he sabotages the game that Vanellope's in. And in sabotaging that game, it glitches and she almost gets deleted because the game has to reboot. and she finds out that was his doing, and she says, no, you're not my friend, and all this stuff. And then the virus that infected the game gets out and infects the whole internet. And in the form of Ralph. Ralph is cloned in the internet and wrecking the internet for everyone, which is kind of unrealistic because it makes it seem like the internet is in this like little space that's as big as like maybe Los Angeles or something. But the internet is worldwide. There's no way everything is contained where people can zip through and go to eBay and IMDb and all that stuff within seconds of each other. Even though that's how it is in the real world, it's a little bit unrealistic to be in such a confined space in the movie world. But it's a movie, and sometimes you have to take it at face value, which I tended to do, but it's just a little bit unrealistic. But I get it, it's a kid's movie. You're supposed to laugh, you're supposed to feel for things, feel for the characters. There was one thing that I liked about Wreck-It Ralph was that even though it was a Disney movie and it was a cartoon, they managed not to break into song. And I'm not really a fan of breaking into a song unless it's a musical. And if it's obviously a musical. And they didn't do that in the first Wreck-It Ralph, but in the second Wreck-It Ralph, they had a musical number. And even though it made sense that there was a musical number and it made sense why, it felt kind of forced. And I know they tried to do their best to like make it funny, make you laugh, but I was just like kind of rolling my eyes through it. But that's just me. The virus copies Ralph because he's insecure about losing Vanellope, losing his best friend. And it copies that insecurity and it infects the internet. And there's a whole bunch of Ralphs tracking down Vanellope, trying to say, don't leave. No, you're going to be my friend. And then he almost kills Ralph. And then Ralph ends up talking to the virus because it forms one big thing, one big giant Ralph, and says, you have to let her go, it's her dream, blah, blah, blah. And really what he's doing is he's talking to himself. He's addressing himself, although the clone is him, but it's kind of like it's stuff that he already realized for himself. And it's kind of something that didn't really need to happen. I wish they would have just went the way of like they were going to delete the virus, just lead it to the virus, and that's what they started to do. But then it got too big, and he had to talk it down. I mean, that whole part was just unnecessary. He could have just told her, and he kind of did tell her, but then it was, he was repeating himself and all this stuff. But I don't know. Okay, I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I just think that they could have done a bit better with making the transitions and the reasons and the motivations for the characters a little bit more believable. Because Ralph in the first movie wasn't insecure about Vanellope. He knew that he was her friend, and they would get to hang out, after she finishes her game, he finishes his game. But it was never to the point where he was afraid of losing her. And it was kind of a little bit too... And I know the characters aren't meant to be romantically involved, but that's what it kind of felt like, kind of like a stalker. Like she was going on her own to help find the steering wheel. And he was like, no, don't leave me. And she left, and he was like contacting her, please come back. Where she meets with the female character in the other racing game, Gal Gadot's character. And the phone opened, but she didn't know that he could hear what they were saying. That she was saying, this is my dream. This is where I want to be. I don't want to go back home. And that hurt him. I think that the whole motivation for creating the virus, for his insecurity, I didn't think the film earned it. Because, if you saw the first Wreck-It Ralph, it's kind of a different Ralph. And it doesn't make sense that he would be so scared of losing her. But that's just me. What did I think of the animation? I thought it was on par with the first movie. I didn't think it had great improvements, but some improvements. Some details on the characters were a little bit sharper. Would I recommend you see it with your kids? Sure. If your kids saw the first Wreck-It Ralph, they would probably enjoy the second one. For the adult crowd, though, I'll be honest, if I didn't go and see this second one in the theater, knowing how it was going to turn out, I probably would have been fine with it. But I ended up seeing it because I figured, hey, I saw the first one, let's see how the second one is. And it's in the second run theater. I'm not paying like $12-15 for a ticket, so why not? I thought the movie was decent. I didn't think it was great. What score would I give it? I would give it a solid B. Because of the animation and because the movie was entertaining. The plot was a little bit weird, over the top for me, but I take that at face value because it's a cartoon. It's a kid's movie. And it's not supposed to be deep. It's not supposed to be all that intellectual. I get it. And it doesn't have to make sense to the level of a movie that's more sophisticated or whatever have you. But anyway, that's how I see it. I like the movie. I didn't love the movie. I had some problems with it, but it wasn't terrible. I probably won't own the disc when it comes out, but I don't own the first one either. Like I said, it was just something to do to kill time. I don't regret seeing it, but it was something that I thought, well, it was what it was. So that's how I see it, and I'll see you guys next time.